and welcome to the Green Scene. My name is Hope Switzer. I'm Vice Chair of the Environment Committee. Today we are going to have Blake Hamilton in the studio to talk about community gardens. So Blake, can you give us a brief history about the community gardens?
Sure. Well, the Community Garden Network in Brandon is it's a fairly new organization. The first community garden in Brandon, I believe, was the Park Community Center's community garden, and that was established in the I believe in the early 90s. But most of the community gardens in Brandon weren't established, weren't built until about 6 or 7 years ago. That they started to pop up, and then in the last 4 years or so, they've really started to. The organization has really started to kind of grow, and the network has started to expand, and more sites are becoming gardens. So,
and what is the purpose of the community gardens?
The community gardens offer people that live in an area a place to grow their own fruits and vegetables, and as well as flowers and other things. Most of the gardens in Brandon tend to focus on food production. So especially for people that don't happen to have a space in their own yard or their own accessibility to land, community gardens offer a plot to either an individual or a family to lease out for the season. Most of the gardens charge some amount of water to offset water costs. But also for people who don't have the know-how, don't have the experience, have some kind of limitation, or just have never gardened before, it can be a really great foot in the door for people to experience gardening and kind of get going on it.
Okay, well, why don't we have a look at some of the community gardens around town? We'll
Sure.
start with the Urban Farm Community Garden.
Urban Farm, the Fifth and Stickney Garden. So that garden is just over in the north end, right alongside the dike, actually. So that's 80 raised beds that were built, I guess, what was it about? This would be the third season, I think, for the Urban Farm. They've had, every garden has its separate set of issues. This garden has had a lot of problems with deer in particular, being that it is over kind of right along the dike, right by the river. There's lots of deer that try to get in there. So, but it does offer a large area, a lot of gardens for people to get involved in growing their own fruits and vegetables. A lot of the people in the North End, historically, the North End has been a place that has been rich in gardening and in Ukrainian culture. For a long time, gardens were abundant in the North End, and so this is kind of a bit of a resurgence or a new wave of gardening in that area. So the one thing that community gardens offer, and one of the more obvious things that they contribute is food. A lot of things can be grown in a community garden, and so it's food that's fresh, available, and cheap.
Organic.
And organic. So most of the gardens in Brandon are organic. I believe most of them, if not all of them, do stipulate that. So they're fertilized with manure from the research station, composted manure, or other organic products, and gives people an opportunity to produce for themselves, and also to share that knowledge in different plants. We've got a lot of people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and have different interests in food. And so the community garden is kind of a showcase of different gardening techniques, different types of fruits and vegetables that can be grown, and very interesting places.
Okay, why don't we have a look at the Westman Seniors Housing Co-op?
The Westman Seniors Housing Co-op Community Garden on McDermott Drive. This garden just was put in this year. So people that live in the seniors housing co-op, a lot of seniors were involved in gardening when they had their own houses, their backyards, or have even moved into the city from farms. So having access to a place to grow fruits, vegetables, and flowers is absolutely, I think, necessary really for people to really have everything that they need when they move into a senior housing or into old folks homes. I really hope that this idea really takes off, and that more seniors housing co-ops and senior care homes offer this to the people living in them. I understand that these gardens are such a hot item that they're actually split in halves because there's so many people that in the building adjacent to it that want to help out with it. So the raised bed offers people with mobility issues that have trouble bending down, the elderly, the opportunity to garden with a lot less bending over, a lot less aggravating arthritic conditions and that kind of thing. So it brings the soil level up 2 to 3 feet or whatever, and people can weed and tend their plants without having to go down to ground level. It does mean that the gardens dry out a little bit faster, but it also ensures that people aren't walking through the garden. If somebody is to cut through that area to take a shortcut, they're not going to go walking through the gardens because they have to climb up and jump from one to the other, which I'm sure can happen from time to time. But generally, it's a nice way of containing the garden and keeping people's feet out of them as well. So.
They really were beautiful gardens. They know how to garden those.
Yeah, and considering that they were just built, it's pretty impressive how full and well tended they are already.
Okay, why don't we have a look at Westridge Community Garden?
Okie dokie. Westridge is another garden that was just built this year. Westridge Community Center by Willowdale and Silver Birch. This garden was just established, 10 raised beds. Some of them are planted by the kids at Linden Lane School in one of the grades, and some of those kids from that class have been tending them over the summer. Some are planted by the daycare, and then others just from the members of the community. Now, new gardens tend to have the most kind of problems with people just not really understanding the purpose of them, and the respect for the gardens kind of grow with the gardens themselves. So at first it's just kind of like a plaything, and so when the gardens were first put in, filled with soil and planted, there was a lot of footprints going across them, and kids with pieces of wood digging holes and whatever else. But as the plants start to grow, it becomes more something to look at, and as more people start to go there to tend the plants and tend the gardens, that concept is established, that this is a thing to respect and to look at, and we have found that the gardens in Brandon have done pretty well, considering how vulnerable a garden is to abuse, to vandalism, to pilfering and that kind of thing. They're pretty much left alone, so it's quite impressive. A lot of people have their doubts when these gardens start to go into areas that have different kinds of issues, and the plants, good luck growing something there and that kind of thing. But it's been pretty incredible how well they have done. So
great. Why don't we have a look at the Hummingbird Community Garden?
Sure. So Hummingbird's garden up on 26th Street in Maryland was established, I think, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, and has been ever growing in size. So it's in a large area that's allocated for school development, should the school division need to build a new school. So it's quite a large space right at 26th Street in Maryland. They started off with some raised beds and some ground level gardens. So there is some raised beds there's picnic areas, and then there is fields of ground level gardens. that are delineated with stakes and strings and that kind of thing. They weren't going to expand this year. I understand that they thought they would have enough gardens, and then ended up changing their minds and adding another 80 garden plots. So
80,
there's over 300 families and individuals gardening at Hummingbird, and they come from all over town. So there is a bike path that goes by there, so some people will get there through that, but a lot of people come by vehicle from a lot of different parts of town, because this is a place where you can actually grow a fair-sized garden, whereas the raised beds, you have to kind of squeeze a lot into a smaller space. These gardens are, I think, 10 by 30 or 10 by 20 feet or something like that, so it does give people a little bit more room. But yeah, it is a remarkable space when you drive by in Maryland to see, dozens of people out there doing their thing and growing lots of fruits and vegetables. So hopefully, the space will thrive for a long time, and they don't need to develop that area anytime soon. But it is something that I think a healthy city does have in their plan, to have spaces that will be kept for gardening and for food production. I think it contributes a lot to the health of the community. Get people out mingling with one another, people from different social, ethnic, economic, whatever types of backgrounds, people that normally wouldn't be in each other's world or in each other's space. It gives people an amazing opportunity, a platform to interact, to network, and to build community. And that's, I think, one of the greatest produce, some of the greatest produce from these gardens is that community health and the neighborhoodly.
Well, it's sure nice to have them. They're beautiful to look at, and just to know what a vegetable actually looks like when it's growing.
So where are we off to next?
Kin Park Community Garden.
Oh, 3rd and Aberdeen.
Right.
Sorry. No, that's fine. I thought we were off to the east end, but yeah, Kin Park is next. So this garden was recently improved about 2 years ago. Raised beds were installed here. It was at ground level before, but it's in kind of a low spot, so there was problems with saturation, and it's in quite a enclosed, nestled in the trees kind of. There's a water park on one side, and or a spray park, and then a play structure on the other side, and then nestled in these aspen and dogwood is this 20 raised bed garden. So here this is one of the more serene gardens in Brandon. It's very easy to kind of think that you're out in the country because you're so kind of enclosed by those trees, and it's quite peaceful at the Kin Park Garden. One of the things that one of the challenges of this garden is the abundance of wildlife that comes by for snacks.
Oh.
So hares, snowshoe hares come through. Moles dig holes, and then the mice go into the holes and nibble on the roots. Gophers, deer, and wild turkeys. So
country living at its best.
Despite the challenges, people have done an exceptional job this year in getting the gardens planted, and already we're starting to see structures being built around the gardens and for trellises, makeshift trellises, and all different sorts of things you can see in that shot there where beans are already starting to climb, and it's really neat to see people's ingenuity and inventiveness. That's something that gardening is really great for. Once people realize what different plants kind of need or are kind of asking for, then it's just a matter of kind of scratching your head and seeing what you have out in the shed or in the garage or down the back alley, and you just start to see these unique kind of things happening in the garden. So,
okay, why don't we take off to the East End Community Garden?
Sure. So, East End's community garden over on Park Street, I believe, and Victoria Avenue was established, I think, in 2010, right beside the big water tower. And this garden is right beside East End Community Centre. So, like Westridge, it's kind of a multi-use area. But again, raised beds. I think there's 40 of them here. And yeah, same sort of thing. Great place for a garden. Lots of there's never any problems filling these spots. There's always a little bit of juggling at the beginning of the season where people are haven't come to plant or can't be gotten a hold of or whatever, and there's always that kind of thing happens a little bit, but there's never any shortage of interest. Like, all the gardens end up getting planted, guaranteed. So no matter how many gardens are getting built, there's always gardeners waiting to plant them, and I think that is indicative of the popularity and hopefully of what's to come in terms of the community garden creation and longevity in Brandon.
Great. Okay, why don't we move on to Alexandra?
Sure. So head over to Alexandra Garden. That's over on 11th Street?
I have 12th in College.
12th and College. This garden is across from Betty Gibson's school. And I think the name Alexandra comes from a school that used to be either at that site or Betty Gibson used to be called Alexandra, something like that.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure on the history, but this garden is over 20 raised beds at any rate. These ones I think are put together with 2x4s, as opposed to some of the other ones that are 4x4 post. So there's a lot of different ways of building raised bed gardens. In a public space, of course, you need to do something that's uniform and secure, as opposed to, say, cinder blocks or loose materials that somebody could make their own backyard gardens, or dresser drawers, or stuff that's a little bit more haphazard. But yeah, so these gardens here, there you can see a lot of chives, squash plants. They've been very well looked after by the coordinator of this site, who also involves the kids at Alexandra Garden, and an older fellow with a lot of experience, and gets the kids involved in different activities and different functions, which would take us to Rock Park.
Yeah, we're just going to Rock Park.
Okay, I was jumping the gun there. So head over to Rock Park. Mm-hmm. Rock Park gets its name from the massive rock that is in the middle of the space there. I don't know if it'll show up on this shot, but this is another garden that's near a senior housing complex or co-op, and or Hobbs Manor. So a lot of the people that tend these gardens are from Hobbs Manor, and I appreciate the extra height to the gardens. Makes it accessible to them, and it's right across from Park Community Centre, and Park Community Centre is I believe the oldest garden in town. These gardens here at Hobbs Manor are very, very large. Something that's a barrier to individuals creating raised beds like that is the cost of materials. So when you start using 4x6s or 4x8s to make 4-foot high gardens, or 3.5 or whatever height of garden boxes, it adds a lot of head cost to the gardens. They do tend to last a very long time. Most of this is, I believe, treated wood. Some people have questions about treated wood. It was made with copper arsenic up until I think 2003, that they changed over to more or to less health concern related products. But something that we did for some of the recent builds was line the gardens with polymer, or with thick polyplastic, which keeps the moisture from soaking into the wood and eventually breaking down, despite the preservation, breaking down the wood. It also keeps the gardens nice and moist because that moisture is retained, and it keeps the treatment in the wood and not leaching into the garden. So that's something for people to keep in mind if they want to. If any of our viewers here would like to do their own raised beds and you want to use treated lumber, it does last a lot longer, and you can line it with plastic and keep the lumber and the treated side of it out of the garden, keep the moisture in the garden, and that'll save the wood. The wood will last a lot longer. You can also just use scrap material, old 2x4s, old wood, like I said, dresser drawers, anything that you can basically make a container with. The only thing is that you'll have to probably replace those boards or build new boxes. Some people even use straw bales, square bales, and use those as raised beds, which eventually turn into soil. And so you're just kind of mitigating and changing the shape of the garden, changing the materials you use. Untreated wood, you might end up with some ants and that kind of thing too. But for the most part, it's the variety is about as expansive as human inventiveness and imagination. So people have grown potatoes in car tires, for instance, and just add soil as the potatoes grow up, and then when the season's over, you knock the tires over and get your potatoes. So there's a lot of different ways. There's as many different ways to garden as there are gardeners, really. Where should we go to next? Park? So Park Community Centre, that's on the southeast side of Louise Avenue, where Rock Park is on the northeast side. So these are virtually right across the street from one another. So this is, I believe, the oldest community garden in Brandon. Started in the 90s, early 90s, and it's just in behind Park Community Centre along a row of spruce trees. It's a nice thing to have at community centers too. I think every school, every old folks home, every seniors housing co-op, and every community center ought to have gardens. Really, it just seems to really kind of fit in with the activities and the people that use and are involved in those spaces. So this one again is a 2x4 build, and over time you'll need to replace some boards and whatnot, but it holds the soil in, keeps it up off the ground. Water evaporation is a big thing to keep in mind with these raised beds. One other thing that can really help is mulching, where you cover the top of the soil with straw or grass clippings.
Yeah.
And it helps to keep the moisture in the soil, keeps the weed seeds from germinating. It reflects light off of the mulch, like that golden color of straw and of sun-bleached grass clippings actually reflects a lot of light, so your plants get more bang for their buck and get a lot more energy, a lot more light.
And to New Era, I know that one's dear to your heart.
Yeah. New Era has a special place in my heart. That was how I first got involved in the Community Garden Network in Brandon in 2009 through New Era School and the New Era Community School Partnership Initiative and a lot of other organizations. We got this garden going. This is made from, these beds are actually made out of a composite lumber, 50% post-industrial sawdust and 50% post-industrial plastic membrane, so plastic bags, and Teflon, saran wrap, all that kind of stuff that they have and use in factories. So this stuff it lasts a very long time, and it doesn't have any chemicals in it other than what's in the plastic. So they've proven to be quite good. This is the fifth season for a lot of these gardens. 40 raised beds at this site, and it also has a row of Saskatoons that you see there, Saskatoon berry bushes. There's grapevines, there's fruit trees, cherry and multiple apple, malice combination, I think it's called. It's about 6 different kinds of apples all grafted onto one tree that's trying to survive. There's some murals going on there, and there's more to come. Classic grade 8s from from New Era, Mrs. Zubricki's class, came out and planted things. So with the raised beds, a lot of people do the traditional kind of rows, planting things in rows with spaces in between. But because you're not actually really needing to go into the gardens, you don't have to really get in there because you can basically reach every portion of the garden from outside. Some people just cover whole areas with seed and do something kind of more like a square foot garden where you're planting in sections rather than in rows. And you know, there's so many different ways of gardening, but the community gardens are a really neat window into how people garden, what they grow, the different kinds of fruits and vegetables. And with there's the herb bathtub right there in the background.
Things moving on, like, is it all volunteer base with the community?
Yeah, if it wasn't for the volunteer coordinators, all the gardens are coordinated by generally one person, sometimes more than one, but they're all volunteers, and I mean, if it wasn't for that initiative and that dedication from those people, it wouldn't be possible. And then also at each site, in coordination with the coordinators, are all sorts of volunteers that will mow the grass and spread the compost and do this and do that and help organize things. And so the amount of volunteer hours that are involved in making Brandon's Community Garden Network as vibrant as it is phenomenal. And definitely take off my hat to those volunteers, those individuals.
I know I appreciated having my garden watered when I went on vacation.
Yeah, and the gardeners step up too, which is really great. A lot of the gardeners that are just looking after their own plot, you know, they could say to heck with everybody else, this is all I have to be concerned with, but they'll look out for each other's, and it starts to, you know, that's community. That's what it's all about, right? So that's what we're growing.
Well, thank you so much for coming to the Green Scene to talk about the community gardens. Thank you so much for watching Green Scene.